separate license. Okay, so I'm going to view SAS data, and so what I'd like to do is browse, find the data I'm interested in. So I'll click on the browse button. And this is raw. Okay, and so what I see here are these SAS folders, and these SAS folders, if that's not selected, go ahead and click on it. These SAS folders are SAS folders created on some server. I don't really even necessarily know where they are. I don't necessarily know where any of this data is located. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on Chocolate Enterprises. And under Chocolate Enterprises, I'm going to double click on data. And I don't necessarily have any idea where or what server this data is located in. I may not even know what kind of data it is. I may not know if it's an Oracle table. It could even potentially be a, behind the scenes the join of a couple different database tables. Now I can't see the whole name initially. What I like to do is use this Views drop down and select Details. And when you do that, it allows you to stretch that so now I can see the whole name. All right? And the one I'm interested in is the first one, not the Q, but it just says Sales Analysis is a table. All right, so I'm going to select that. You can double click on it or select it and click Open. And now that should show up here under Data. And what I want to do is when that finally does show, there it goes. I want to select Pivot Table. I want to open that data into an Excel pivot table. So select Pivot Table. And I want it to show up in a new worksheet. The default would be sheet 1, but I want to create a new worksheet, and my new worksheet is going to be called Sales Pivot Table, or just Sales Pivot, whatever you want to call it, depending on how much you like to type. And then click on OK. And that should look like page 2-9 in your book. All right, so what this is going to do is it's going to bring up an Excel pivot table, and it's going to allow me to kind of, I guess, customize that pivot table. So we're moving data right now from the server back over to the local machine. And so initially, my pivot table doesn't know what to do, because I haven't selected it. So what I'm going to do over here on the right is I'm going to check category. And now I'm starting to get some stuff in the pivot table. I'm going to select subcategory and total sales and year. All right? And remember what I said before, year is a numeric value? Well, because it's a numeric value, I'm getting sum of year, which is pretty much useless, right? So what I'm going to do down here is I'm going to take this sum of year and I'm going to drag it up here into columns. All right, so just grab sum of year and just drag it up here and drop it into columns. That looks a little bit better. Now I've got years as columns and I've got categories as rows. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to subset this. I've got a lot of years here going back to 2005. I don't want to go back that far. So I'm going to use my column labels drop down, and I'm going to get rid of everything. I'm going to uncheck select all. That gets rid of everything. And then I'm just going to click the bottom three, 12, 11, and 10. All right, so I'm just going to filter this to look at the most recent 3 years. And I'll click on OK. All right, so that gets rid of those. And I'm going to do something similar for the row labels. I'm going to use the drop down on row labels, and I'm going to get rid of the bottom 2, I think. I want chocolate and gummy. Yeah, so I'll get rid of the bottom 2, just uncheck those, and click on OK. All right, and the way pivot tables work is, in some cases, these dimensions are going to be expandable and collapsible. If I had selected months, which didn't select, but potentially I could expand the years into months as well if I organize it that way. Okay? So that's I think one of the reasons people like these pivot tables. It allows you to collapse and expand and look at summary values and so on. All right, well, let's save this. So if I'm going to save this, I'm going to go over to Excel, the Excel functionality. All right, so I'll go over to the File tab, and I'll click on Save As. And I'm going to save this under the S drive. And this is where we're going to kind of put everything in these workshops. All right? Everybody with me? All right, so double click on the S, local disk S, and then double click on Workshop. And then under here, I think, is there a Chocolate Enterprises? There is, so double click on Chocolate Enterprises. And under there, we're just going to put it right under there. All right? Right under, so up here it should say Workshop Chocolate Enterprises. And we're not going to call it Book 1, that's the default name. I think we're going to call it Workshop 1 instead. And then click on Save. So that did get saved, and if you look up at the top, it tells you we're looking at workshop1.xls. All right, that's great. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to look at an entire table, not the table as a pivot table, but the whole table. So what I'm going to do is I'm looking on page 2-12, and I'm going to go back to the SAS tab, which actually I'm already there, and I'm going to do a open again. And I'm going to open the same table. And this time, let's start off with filter and sort before we do anything. All right, so I'm going to go to the filter and sort. I'm going to use the same table, so it's already remembered it. And I'll click on the filter and sort button. And what I want to do is I don't want all of the columns. So by default, all the columns are selected. I'm going to get rid of customer ID, move that over. Product ID, double click on it to move it over, and total case. I'm going to get rid of 3 of the columns. They will not display. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to effectively filter the columns. Notice there's a filter tab and there's a sort tab. All right, so if I wanted to, I could filter the rows and I could sort the rows. But we're just going to get rid of some of the columns. I'll click on OK. And I do not want a pivot table. So I want to check Worksheet. And notice that it's going to show me 500 at a time. All right, remember that number, 500. I'm going to create a new worksheet, and this one's going to be called Sales Table. And that's shown on page 2-13. I'll click on OK. And now I'm going to get a new worksheet down here. It's going to show me the table. And if I use them, I'm going to call this over here, I'm going to call that the Excel scroll bar. If I use the Excel scroll bar and scroll all the way to the bottom, it shows me that there are 500 rows that are being displayed. You remember that number that I told you to remember? 500, right? So is that the total number of rows, do you think, in the server table? No, it is not. Okay, I mean, it could be. It would be an awful big coincidence if we just happened to have 500 rows. But what the deal is because I specified a 500 as the number of rows to bring over in time, the server will buffer and send 500 rows at a time. Now let's go over to the SAS ribbon, SAS tab, if you're not already there. And notice that I have this navigation tool set here. This appeared when I brought in the table. And I'm getting 500 rows per view. Now, if I scroll through this, I can use this arrow. This is the SAS scroll bar, or the SAS scroll arrow. I can scroll through this, and I'll scroll through it 500 at a time. So now I'm looking at rows 501 to 1,000. If I scroll again, I'm looking at rows 1,001 to 1,500. And this can continue on. If I have if I have a billion rows in this, I can still view it, and I can still analyze it using Excel.
Is there any way that you can jump to a certain position, or do you have to cycle through?
No, you can click on, this doesn't look clickable, but it is, the range. If you click on that, you can just type in there, and actually we do that in the book, I think. Good question. Well, maybe we don't. Oh yeah, we did. We jumped to 3. No, that's when we jumped to the end. But yeah, we can type something in here. I'll type in 50,000. 50, comma, 1, 2, 3. Going okay. And it jumps to 50,000. The other good thing about that, clicking on that range that you see there, is it lets you see the total number of rows, the total count for the entire table. Now, Excel has a limit, at least this version of Excel has a limit of 1,000,000. But I certainly can go beyond that. So the SAS does let you go beyond the Excel maximum, which is kind of nice. All right. Let's go back to the filter and sort. So if you'll notice over here in this selection area, there's a filter and sort selection. Let's click on that, and that brings up the same filter and sort we saw before. All right, let's go over to filter, the filter tab, and let's filter this where the category is chocolate, gummy, or hard. All right, so I'll use this drop down and I'll select category. And then I'll use the next drop down and I'll select in a list, third one from the top. All right, that's shown at the bottom of page 2-14. And then I'll use this requester button. I'll click on that, the dot, dot, dot button,